Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Tonight, right here at the Turnbuckle Tavern, live from No Sale Studios. I'm the Ace of the Tavern, Acefield Retro, and joined, as always, on this Monday evening with the one bad Chad himself. What's going on, dude?
Not a whole lot, man. It feels good to be back, not previewing a big card, not discussing the fallout from a big card, not talking about CM Punk. We got 3 fresh stories. We will touch on a little bit of the Phil Brooks shit in quick hitters, but it's nice to have a bunch of fresh quick hitters, some fresh topics. And I don't know about you, Ace, but I feel hopeful with wrestling right now. I feel like AEW is kind of trying to right the ship and prove that they don't need Chicago's own. And it's an exciting time for me right now.
Absolutely. It seems like they're up for the challenge creatively, and it seems like a lot of the stories are being weaved into what this really the build for a month of Wrestle Dream and having what we've been asking for, extended weeks of build instead of cramming everything into 2 weeks. And of course, you referenced previewing shows, and feels like week after week there was a big show, whether it be with AEW or Impact or WWE. We're in the kind of the clear right now where we can let this breathe, watch the sequential TV shows and understand what's going on, but really get ready for what's going to be an exciting autumn across all of wrestling, whether it be New Japan, and we got MLW crushing it as well. So, man, there's a lot of good stuff on the table, but I like what you said too. We're focused on the stuff in the ring. There was like, one of my favorite movies is The Grinch. And of course we're in the fall, so The Grinch will be heavily consumed during the winter season, but there's the scene where they invite the Grinch down from Mount Crumpet, and he's doing everything. He's doing the fudge eating contest, they're carrying him around, doing the races and all that. And then it gets to the point where he gets angry, destroys the whole town.
Yeah.
Everything's on fire.
Yeah.
And then the mayor gets on the microphone. Can we get back to the way it was supposed to be, Grinchless? And that's how I felt with AEW. It's like, can we just get back to the way it used to be?
Right.
Punkless.
Right. I think we're all exhausted, man. We have Punk exhaustion. And I'm a guy, I'm not against it. I thought it would have been, if he just would have played the game and been a team player, I was all for it. He's a good piece to the puzzle to have. But if you're just going to stir shit, I mean, they were rocking and rolling way before he ever signed that contract for All Elite Wrestling. And I think now, with that kind of albatross around their neck removed, we can get back to what we started loving the company for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, the tribalism that happens across different promotions was happening within the walls of AEW, and that's unhealthy for the fan base. So,
yeah,
for those that are just not going to prefer the talent that's there, including the elite, maybe it makes them turn away. But I think everyone that's there has the best interest of, I like this product because of what they've been bringing to the table. And the internal conflict just goes away, hopefully.
Yeah, and I think it puts a healthy chip on everyone's shoulder to show, like, we're here because we believe in what we're doing, and we're going to show you that this isn't stopping us. This isn't slowing us down. They're just coming off of the biggest event they ever did and All In, and then they did All Out, and they're mired in all of this other talk of Punk, and it's like, hey, man, we just put 81,000 in a stadium for a reason, and we're going to show you why we got to that point.
Yeah, and as we look at the other side of things, WWE is sort of in, I would say, neutral right now with some of their big stories. Judgment Day taking the forefront. A lot of that stuff has been interesting, but the Bloodline stuff, Chad, has been kind of non-existent on our TVs. There's been a little bit of the murmurings and stuff, but without Roman Reigns, it seems like there's a lack of buzz in WWE.
Yeah, and I'm seeing, like, just kind of taking the temperature of the room with the IWC. I'm seeing a lot of people kind of out on Bloodline a little bit. I'm not out on it. I think, like you said, they're just kind of in cruise control, and they're trying to bide their time until it heats back up. We've got a little bit to go before WrestleMania 40, and they know they have to stretch it. And I think taking the foot off the pedal a little bit to stretch it out, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And when it heats back up, it'll again become the topic of conversation. So,
yeah, and people always forget about these lulls when it gets good again. So I think people forget that there's been lulls before in this Bloodline story. So we'll see it, of course, when Roman's not there. It's going to be on a back burner, and there's other story to tell with the Uso brothers and all that. But Of course, let's get into our big stories, and it has to do with WWE with big story number one.
Big stories. Story 1.
Big story number one. Gunther is now officially recognized as the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in WWE history. Man, this has been a long time coming. They've been trying to, as we've talked about it on Wrestling Tonight, reset their record books and get some modern faces in that alum of longest holding champions. And we see that kind of become a forefront of Roman Reigns is passing Pedro Morales, and he's approaching Hulk Hogan and trying to reach out his hand to get to Bruno Sammartino, even though it's still very much far away. But the Intercontinental Champion with the history of everything that we've seen, the best IC champions in history. And I don't think anyone really believed Honky Tonk Man was the greatest IC champion in history. I think through 1987 to 1988 when he held the title, when he beat Ricky Steamboat and then eventually lost to Ultimate Warrior. I think, it's tongue in cheek, but that record felt untouchable, especially with the nearsighted booking in WWE in recent years. The Attitude Era definitely wasn't going to allow for it. Ruthless Aggression certainly wasn't going to allow them to have a long reign. This is amazing that it happened, and I think we have to really take it in. That a guy like Gunther / Walter, a guy that we all talked about was kind of doomed on the main roster, is now in the record books as the longest reigning IC champion again. And I don't think it ever gets broken.
No, it'll be a long, long time, probably as long as it's been since Honky set the record. And I think what this is to me, when I look at it, it seems like this is kind of a microcosm litmus kind of showing where the company is right now versus back then. Honky essentially, he's a good old boy territory wrestler in the Fed, sets this record. And now you have an Austrian breaking this record. It shows that WWF has moved beyond territory days, and WWE is now this global commodity. So I think it shows that the fact that you're willing to put a record like this on a talent like Gunther, I don't think that ever would have happened under Vince Sr.'s watch or a young Vince Jr. I don't think that's happening. And it's pretty cool to see a guy like Gunther have the trust and respect of this company to put a record like this, because like you said, this isn't being broken anytime soon, if ever. And for you to saddle up, your premier mid-card title with a guy like Gunther and say, hey, when you open the record books, this is the name that's going to be there. That's a big sign of faith in Gunther, the performer.
Yeah, and Gunther's been dominant on his whole reign here in WWE, and of course, as NXT UK champion, held that for an extended period of time, now with the IC champion, and the booking's been really strong, and we got Triple H himself on X talking about this. He said, defining his own legacy, and this is just the beginning. Congratulations to Gunther on making history as the longest reigning IC champion ever. So 454 days, they passed the mark, and Honky Tonk Man, as we referenced, won it back against Ricky Steamboat. Ricky Steamboat's still in our eye. We just saw him on pay-per-view, which is amazing. I love seeing his name pop up.
Yes.
Losing its Ultimate Warrior in that squash match in August of 1988. Man, I looked through the annals of time where the IC champion was prevalent. It was one of my favorite championships growing up. It took a hit for a very long time. There was an extended period of time on WrestleMania where it wasn't defended.
Right.
You can do the research on it. I mean, we can go back and look. There was a time of almost at least 8 years where it wasn't defended on WrestleMania. So the fact that it's prominently featured here, and not to tie this with AEW, but we also saw a mid-card title main event at pay-per-view. This is good for the culture of wrestling where other titles mean things except for the world title. And the IC championship means a hell of a lot more than the world heavyweight championship to me. Obviously, the Universal Championship, the one that Roman holds, is the most prestigious, but there's so much to having your IC champion mid-card championships mean something, because it just kind of breathes life into everyone else because they're striving for something.
Absolutely. It gives the mid-card something to do. And I think this goes beyond just a modernization of the company's record books. Obviously they're wanting to modernize those records and put fresh faces behind them. That's one thing. But I think this is also double fisting as a complete restoration project of the Intercontinental Championship. Like you said, during that stretch of Manias where it wasn't being defended, that's when fans were at their most critical of this. There was hardly any story. The story that was booked with the IC belt seemed very just kind of haphazard, not a lot of meat behind it. And it felt like, you always hear people say sometimes the guy makes the title and sometimes the title makes the man. And I feel like they kind of rested on the title makes the guy for so long that the title lost value because of that, because the guys they put behind the title, they wouldn't give them any meat behind it. I mean, during that time, like, I think the person with the most reigns, unless it's been recently broken, I think Jericho's held the title the most, right?
Yeah, or Miz, Wade Barrett, they're all in the same thing where like it was being passed around like a hot potato.
Yeah, somewhere like that. So this was a very it felt like a TV title, which I guess essentially maybe it is WWE's version of a TV title. Because traditionally for me, TV titles do pass hands a lot more than your other titles. But I always looked at the IC belt as a step above a TV title, like it was your number one contendership title. It was this guy's next up. He's got next. It was this is the future of our heavyweight division type of title, where for a long time it was booked like a TV title where it could change hands dramatically at any moment. I think we had the big crowning achievement of Zack Ryder, aka Matt Cardona, winning at Mania only to drop it 24 hours later at Raw. So it kind of became that title where there wasn't, they bastardized it for so long that no one cared. And I feel like a lot of fans were pretty upset about it because like you said, this was your title growing up. I think it was every wrestling fan of our age and generation. It was all our title. The Mr. Perfects, the Bret Harts, the Shawn Michaels, Warrior with his run, Triple H, The Rock, everybody had this really was a coronation title. And I think with Gunther, man, they're resetting the record books. They're restoring the prestige of the IC belt. But I think this is a coronation for Gunther too, because one of those titles, he's not going to beat Roman, obviously, but one of those titles will be around Gunther's waist before it's all said and done. He is a world champion in waiting. I'm sure he'll be a heel to whoever holds it, maybe Cody, maybe Rollins, but at a certain point, we're going to see a universal or world heavyweight title run from Gunther, and this record-breaking reign that Gunther's been on is a sign of that, I think.
Yeah, and patience has paid off. They put a lot into this, and easily they could have pulled the plug with knee-jerk reactions, and it would pop a rating in a certain city where if they wanted to have Gunther lose the title, but they've stayed the course, and now they're better for it because, as you mentioned before, the IC champion, and that is usually the guy who is next up for the world champion. This is a pedestal to step up to that scene. I remember SummerSlam 98 when we had Rock and Triple H, those two dudes, like you knew they were going to be world champion. It wasn't long. It was less than a year away from that point where they're both in the world title scene. And I think that's what we're looking at with Gunther. And then once this IC championship is off of him, and I think it's going to be soon because we'll talk about who we think is going to take it off of him. Now that the record has been passed, now that 454, that number we've circled on our calendar, is gone, now it's free reign to take the title off Gunther, and it will be better for it because anyone that can beat Gunther, you give the rub to them. But also Gunther, I think at this point, he needs to be in the World Heavyweight Championship position. He needs to be there. And all the international dates you do, have that big bad Austrian going out there and just destroying people and you want to bring prestige to the World Heavyweight Championship. Seth Rollins is doing a pretty damn good job with this title that they created for him. But man, you put that on Gunther, and all of a sudden that you take the lore of what Gunther is, Walter, this chopping machine. I don't know. I think this guy helps everything on the roster, and it's a pleasant surprise because I think when we all watched Walter coming up through Progress in the UK scene, he was signed to NXT. Everyone was like, "All right, he's going to be awesome here because he's going to be on NXT in this local NXT UK market, putting on bangers with Pete Dunne and Dragunov, and it's awesome." But he's never going to achieve what he's going to achieve on the main roster. Well, he toned down his body, got really in shape, kind of fit the aesthetic of what WWE main roster appeal wants. And now he's still kind of having the flair of that, beating the shit out of people. His style really hasn't changed. And all of a sudden he is just, it feels like could be the guy. You referenced that maybe he's not going to beat Roman. That may not be out of the realm of possibility. I don't think he is the guy, but it's not that far fetched at this point. I think he's destined to win the World Heavyweight Championship from Seth sooner than later. But goddamn, dude, this is really, really cool to see for both things, the IC title and for Gunther.
Yeah, I don't think it's a stature problem that keeps him from beating Reigns. I think I could buy that. It's a story. It's the story that they've set that makes me not buy that, just because you've got such a long reign. This is when Roman drops it, you're coronating your next baby face, which I think we all believe is Cody Rhodes. But as far as like stature within the company, they've built Gunther to a point where I believe he could beat anyone.
Right.
I truly believe that. And honestly, man, here recently, his stature has grown to a point where he did something that I've been wanting for a long time. And I truly think he elevated Chad Gable in that little feud of matches they had. And I honestly think that could be the teaser to who's going to win. I think Gable could take that belt off of him. I think the story's there. Keep riding with that. No, like you said, now that this record is broken, we can get to the meat and potatoes of the storytelling and not be so focused on, there was kind of a predictability with his matches where it's like, nah, he's not going to lose here because he's got to break this record. Now that the record's been broken, all bets are off. Like, this title could be dropped. I feel like the predictability now is out the window. Anything goes. And I really hope that series of matches is kind of the writing on the wall of where they see Chad Gable, because along with Gunther and several other guys, I've always earmarked Chad Gable as, if they book him right, this guy is a top tier mid card guy. He's Kurt Angle in a lot of ways for me. So I hope they lean into that a little bit.
Yeah. And I think honestly, maybe it's, subconscious on their end, but the Kurt Angle Peacock documentary just came out, and Kurt Angle and Chad Gable share a lot of similarities, both in ring attire, ring style. They're growing up in the amateur wrestling scene. So I think Gable is the guy to take it from him and put it on pay-per-view. And I think at this point, have him just go over clean. It won't hurt Gunther, because at this point we've seen him beat him by countout, took him to the limit on Raw on the last episode we saw on August 21st, where the countout was August 21st. Then last week for the record-breaking Intercontinental Championship win, I think Gable could do it realistically, and the sky's the limit for that guy, because as long as they're not letting the height get in the way,
right?
And there's been talk about that, where you see how he was perceived on the roster prior to really Triple H having any say, being Shorty G. Like, we're long gone from that. This is a wrestling machine. He's over with the crowd. He has the charisma and the showmanship of the sports entertainer with the shoes and everything that goes on with that. He's funny.
Yep.
He's charming. He's witty. Everything about him speaks as WWE sports entertainment. Plus, the dude can go. He's a wrestling machine. And too often we don't have those guys at the top of the card. I would love to see him mix it up, really, with a guy like Seth Rollins too, but let him be the IC champion. Let Gunther kind of take that spot.
100%, dude. And everything, the reason people say he's Angle isn't just because of that Olympic pedigree and the barn burner wrestling he does. It's exactly what you just said, Ace. It's the funny. It's the charisma. And I know you said, is the short factor, the Shorty G, he's too short factor, going to hold him back in the land of the giants. I feel like that is the story, man. That's how you make him. The fact that he's not that guy and he can still go in there and do it. You gotta take a little page out of the AEW's book if you're WWE and look at the way they booked Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy, not a big guy. The way they're booking Darby Allin, Those guys do not fit the traditional sense, and they're not anywhere near ripped up from the ground up like Chad Gable is. Sure, he might be short, but he is jacked. Dynamite comes in small packages, man, and he's got it. I think the way they're handling Orange and Darby is the way I would handle Gable. Yeah, he's a little guy, but the biggest guys he can take out with the way he works in the ring. And I think you've got a star because, like you said, the charisma and the comedy this guy can do. I think he's shown personality with Alpha Academy and things like that, and the little bits they give them. He's gaining the trust of the booking team because anything they give him, he makes work. He tries. He doesn't come out with the boo-boo face and bitch and complain. He actually puts in the effort, and this newfound personality and the fact that he's an absolute bell-to-bell killer. I think we're seeing someone groomed to be the guy to take it from Gunther. And what a way to coronate the next IC title. That's the beauty of this record-breaking reign that Gunther's on, is whoever gets it, you're in a Roman situation where whoever beats Roman has to be a big deal. You're in the same position with this IC belt of whoever beats Gunther. It can't just be a random guy. It has to be someone that you're going to hitch your wagon to and really believe in and get behind.
And it seems so simple, right? Like they why weren't they doing this for the longest time? I think the lack of patience speaks to the nearsighted booking of not having really the peaks and valleys of having to book this reign. When you won it back on June 10th, 2022 against Ricochet, feels like they had this plan. And I'm sure there were writers and creative that wanted to put the title on someone else. They easily could have just pivoted where the IC champion, before we had the actual consolation belt of being World Heavyweight Championship, this was the consolation belt. The Sami Zayn's holding it when he was the most over on the roster doing the conspiracy theory stuff. And they even gave it to Shinsuke. But the title didn't mean shit because they were just giving it to people. Now it feels like Gunther has bestowed this prestige on the championship that hasn't been there. I mean, if ever. Like, I understand people are nostalgic about the times where Brett and Mr. Perfect and British Bulldog and all that time. But I even think back to Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit. The title's never really felt this important. And I know that might sound recency bias or hyperbole, but take off the rose-colored,
I think you're right about that.
nostalgia glasses. This is the most prestigious it's ever been. And he's the strongest booked IC champion in the history of the company. And
I think you're dead on about that, man, because what you're saying, that belt, when Brett had it, when Mr. Perfect had it, the belt was important, but the reigns weren't these. We didn't realize at the time that we were in these big monumental reigns. Like, it was just Brett is great, Sean is great, Mr. Perfect's great, and they have this belt. And this belt goes to guys we like, but it didn't feel historic at the time. Even Honky, like, it's not like when you're in the middle of Honky, they're like, man, he's breaking this record. He just had the title for that long. And then the history of looking back and him saying, I'm the longest reign, it became a thing, but it wasn't a thing while we were in it. Now, this reign, this title, it's a thing while we're in it. It feels important right now in the here and now. We're not waiting for 10 years down the road to look back on Gunther and be like, man, that was historic. We know we're in the midst of history right now.
Yeah, and I think with Honky Tonk Man, his record was just they forgot to defend it a lot of times. Like, I think it was one of those
right.
absence was just like crewing time. And then when it just shows what it really meant when Ultimate Warrior legit squashed him. And, when he would wear the greatest IC champion on his tights and stuff, it's tongue in cheek. And I think we know Honky Tonk Man is a caricature of himself. It doesn't make any sense to have him being your longest reigning champion. It's a good gimmick for him. He can sign it on his 8x10s and he can bring it on the indies with him. But as far as prestige of the championship, a guy like Gunther, you can't ask for a better guy to present and saying, this is what our championship means.
Right.
And there's going to be people that grow up with the IC championship that is, they're 9-10 years old that they can remember. I remember when Gunther held that title, no one could beat that goddamn guy.
Yeah. He's dominant. He's a dominant force. And I think he's made the belt. The belt has made him. The reign has been created. Like, everything is working in conjunction with each other. It's not like it's just the guy making the belt important, or it's not just the belt making the guy important. Everything is kind of working together to make a really interesting, compelling intercontinental title right now.
And lost in all this is Gunther hasn't been pinned yet, too. That's also add to the lore
Crazy.
of whoever gets that rub. If Gable winds up pinning him or tapping him out, the only loss he suffered on the main roster was that count-out loss to the aforementioned Chad Gable. So we'll see what happens. But on Raw this week, we have a celebration that they're making a big deal about this. So we're going to preview Raw, but they're doing a celebration in the ring where they're going to be referencing that he did pass Honky Tonk Man's reign. They're going to celebrate him. We'll see if the next challenger comes up, whether it continue to be Chad Gable or they set the program up for the fall. I think inevitably you have to pull the trigger at, say, Survivor Series or something like that where it's going to live in lore. It has to be one of the big fours at this point. I know we like Roman's not losing the title at Payback. It has to happen at one of the big four, namely WrestleMania. I don't think Gunther lasts till WrestleMania. I really don't. I think he's going to lose the title at Survivor Series.
I was about to say the same thing. I think Survivor Series, you earmark him to drop it and move him into a program with Seth or whoever has the title at that time. And just a quick point of, he hasn't been pinned yet. That is that is an example of good booking for a guy. We're buying into the guy because we like the guy, but the booking also helps us like the guy. Like Killer Cross, Carrion, they're beating him left and right, and you can't attach to him. But if you know him from the independents, if you attach the same style of booking to Carrion could have been in a position like this too. But Gunther does kind of have that stoic, quiet killer vibe where he can just come in and mow guys down. And this all started in NXT UK. Like you could go back to PWG. Like this started around then, but it's an example of you got to have the guy, and the guy's got to run with it, but you got to give the guy good booking too. And I think they believe in Gunther. He seems like he's Triple H's guy, one of them, and they've booked him perfectly to get him to this point.
And this just shows you, man, just to put to rest the 50-50 booking logic that WWE's been using for the last 15 years. It doesn't work because because now looking at this, there's obviously going to be a time and place where guys are going to beat each other and beat them back and like the feuds that are in between. But you need the guys at the top of the card that are winning 85, 90%, maybe even 99.9% of their matches, because that's how you establish the roster. So 50-50 booking can go.
Look at Orange.
Go screw.
They did the same thing with let Orange go on a run to bring that international title up. It's the same philosophy.
Yeah, if you think back at the last couple IC title reigns, they were being pinned. Like that was par for the course. Like, oh, they lost in a non-title match. We'll set up the contender for the next pay-per-view.
Right.
What does that accomplish? Like everyone can beat each other on any given night. Cool, but nothing means anything. It's 50-50 booking.
Hate 50-50 booking. It's the worst. It's one of the worst wrestling booking philosophies out there.
It's a cowardly way out of not wanting to make a decision on who should be on top of the company. And it seems like they've established the guys they want. And I couldn't be happier. Gunther should be the dude you run with. Once Cody's champion too, go after that goddamn title and go on tour with him. Go to Europe, set up dates, and let this be the Rocky 3 montage.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get to big story number 2.
Big story 2.
We have an update on LA Knight being extended for his WWE contract, and he's also expected to receive what is, quote, a mega push from the company. So this is according to PW Insider. WWE and Knight have been negotiating a long-term contract between the two parties, rumored to be about 5 years, with the deal nearing closure or already closed. We know how high they are, Chad, on LA Knight at this point. We know that he's someone that's moving merch, which may be more important than the reaction he's getting. LA Knight is kind of taking over pro wrestling, and he has this movement that's kind of contagious at this point, and he's undeniable. It seems like they tried to put the kibosh on the fire, but it only grew. We see they were kind of hesitant to put the Money in the Bank briefcase on him. They put him in these meddling feuds, but nevertheless, LA Knight has risen to the occasion. And I even just speak from example. I was at a VPW show last night for Independent, and I was at the Turnbuckle Tavern table, and in the in-between, just as much as like back in 2014, you'd hear the yes chants. There were yeah chants in between the silence of just like one person says yeah, and the other person says it back. And that just shows you how it's resonating with the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, this could be the new Woo. I mean,
Yeah.
like at least this generation, there's still naysayers out there that don't see this guy as a main eventer, but I feel like this report from PW Insider, you have to kind of look at this, that they are earmarking this guy as a big deal in the future. I think this whole contract extension is circled around him being the potential top babyface of SmackDown, which I'm guessing the reports are saying that, you know, they were waiting to give him this mega push until they got him locked up. They wanted to lock him up for the next 5 years. So they knew, okay, if we give this guy a push, we have him. We don't want to get behind. And that's business. I think that's the business of wrestling. Sometimes maybe they're a little reluctant to push a guy, especially who's not a company guy. You know, LA Knight has been Eli Drake, NWA, Impact. He's been all over the place. So it's like, do we trust this guy to be here for the company? If we, you know, what if he gets hot in a year, 2 years, and then his contract comes up and we're not willing to pay what he's asking for and we have to let him go. And we took all this time to push him and then we get no payoff and he goes off and gets a monster contract at another company. Now they're locking him in knowing, okay, now we can push this guy. Now we have time. We know he's going to be on the roster for X amount of time and we can really do what we want to do with him. What do you think? What's LA Knight look like a year from now? Where do you think we're going to be with him?
So when I look at LA Knight, I look at him as an example of what could have been with Mr. Kennedy. And I know that for people that didn't watch, Mr. Kennedy had self-imposed wounds in that push. I think he got suspended for enhancement talent and performance-enhancing drugs. I believe he got suspended. And then also he got hurt after the Money in the Bank. They took it off him and then Edge took it and won the title, all that. But the charisma, the rise for the card reminds
the microphone dropping down.
It reminds me of Mr. Kennedy, and we know what happened with that. And I think there was a chance for Mr. Kennedy to become this big star in the company. Just wasn't that. I think LA Knight probably will be world heavyweight champion somewhere down the line. I just think when I look at him, he is, to me, the package that WWE creates and he's gotten over organically. And I know Eli Drake, the stuff started in NWA and Impact, so it's not like something they created. But the in-ring style to me speaks volumes of what they want. Watching the feud with The Miz and watching him sort of in the ring, it's not about the in-ring character. It's not for me personally. I think I'm drawn to him, his charisma on the screen. I think they're kind of striking while the iron is hot with him, which I do appreciate because I've been a vocal critic of ignoring what the fans are doing with Sami Zayn, with Bryan Danielson back in the day. So they're actually getting behind this organic movement of LA Knight. I think he's going to be on the card next year, obviously. I think he'll be world heavyweight champion between now and then. He probably will have, a feud with maybe Gunther for that title. I just don't see him as the face of the company. I don't see it happening. Doesn't mean he can't be a guy that's very memorable throughout the annals of time. I think he's going to continue to sell merch. And as long as that happens, people are going to get behind him. And we see even Dave Meltzer recognizing that he is someone that the crowd reaction is pulling this, but it really is. It's the segmented time on TV that's popping a rating, and it's also the merchandise deals. So they don't really care about you getting the reaction in the arena. They want to make sure you're moving numbers financially for them, and he's doing it. So I know it sounds, I'm poo-pooing it. It's just not, he's just not for me as far as in-ring work.
No, I get it, man. When I look at this guy, he is WWE's wet dream in a lot of ways, because he's not for me either from an in-ring standpoint. His wrestling is pretty.
It's PC. It's the performance center. That's what you want.
Safe. It's safe. It's cut and dry. It's paint by numbers, but the character, in a lot of ways, you could say Cena was very paint by numbers in the ring. I wasn't a Cena guy, but he was charismatic. He got to where he was from his charisma. I don't think LA Knight is going to be the quote unquote face of the company either. I'd be shocked just because of age and all of that. I think Cody's probably going to be that guy for the next 5 years. But you're getting into a position with this roster where if we always were kids of the Attitude Era. So they are getting to a good spot where that upper card, if you've got your Seth Rollins, your Romans, your Codys, your Gunthers, your LA Knights, all kind of mixing up, kind of reminds me, I'm not going to compare the talent of the individual, but it kind of reminds me of Attitude Era when you had Stone Cold, The Rock, Mick Foley, Triple H, Undertaker, all kind of hovering around that top card. I think LA Knight could hover in that area, but I'm with you. When it comes to like, I want to sit down and watch a 20-minute match, he's not my guy. But if I want to watch a 5-minute in-ring segment, he's pretty entertaining.
Absolutely. And I was very entertained with the segments he was doing. I thought the Miz feud took a lot off the top for me. I was much, and to me, Miz is a wet blanket. I know people are very high on him, but I think any program he's in takes the momentum away and sucks it dry. People are popping over him wrestling John Cena, like the invisible John Cena, and doing this skull crushing finale.
Yeah. And at the same time,
guy's so whack to me.
At the same time, when someone does that on the indies, they bury them for it.
True.
So it's like, it's the pot calling the kettle black. It's typical Fed brain hypocrisy to me.
Good point. And I look at also LA Knight, the age is something people circle. He's 40 years old, and that is not a death sentence on the roster. But
no,
more than ever, we know that 40 is the new 30. But I also look at historic of WWE, and probably one of the most examples of a guy, late bloomer type of guy, was Dave Bautista in 2005. Through his run and winning the Rumble in 2005 and going to main event WrestleMania against Dave Bautista versus Taker, and also down the line where Dave Bautista won the championship from Triple H after losing the match, after leaving Evolution. Point being, he was 36 years old, and his time at the top of the roster was pretty short-lived. I mean, so was a lot of the top guys. So if you look at that through the vacuum of Stone Cold's run at the top wasn't long either, not because of age, but because of injury. 40 years old. I think if you get 2 really good years at LA Knight at the top of the card, I think that will be great. And I think he's going to be someone that people will remember very fondly. And hopefully it goes better than the Mr. Kennedy path where, he fizzled out pretty quickly. They lost trust in him. But I think if you follow where they were at this point, they're in a segmented spot in the road where hopefully LA Knight gets, capitalize on the momentum instead of squashing it like Mr. Kennedy did. But they're pretty much the same, really, if you look at them.
If Vince never stepped down and Triple H never got a little bit of more control, does this happen?
It's tough to say. I would say probably not, because again, if you look at just the history of WWE creative, they look past the organic crowd reactions because they believe it's, quote, a fad. If you remember with Daniel Bryan, when the Yes movie was getting over, they actually gave the Yes chance to the Big Show just to show that it had nothing to do with the guy. It had to do with the chant. And that was proven wrong, where people would not attach the pop that Daniel Bryan was getting with the Big Show. So I think, no, this wouldn't have happened because they want this guy to make money now. And I think LA Knight was a restoration project because they had to make people believe in him. They gave him enough mic time. They gave him the rope and the atmosphere for him to be able to cut his promos and get over. Because if you watch him in Impact and NWA as Eli Drake, this was always there. This was the act. And it got over everywhere he went. But to do it on this level in WWE, I don't think he would have had the stage to do it. He was given the opportunity because Triple H saw what he saw in NXT.
Well, I mean, look at what Vince saw him as. He was a manager for Maximum Male Models, right?
True. Mm-hmm.
So does he ever break out of that vision of himself from Vince? Does he ever get the opportunity to show this side of him? Because I'm wanting to say this all changed when Vince stepped down was when the change of LA Knight happened. And we got NXT's LA Knight on the main roster. And from what the reports say, Vince watched from afar and became a fan of LA Knight because he saw something. I mean, how could you not see something in these Yeah, Chance. Like that's their bread and butter, man. And the fact that Triple H is listening to the crowd a little more is a good sign, but I don't think he ever gets anywhere near being able to do this if Vince is in charge. I think
Yeah.
he could have been saddled with that bad manager gimmick, too old. He's got a mouth on him, so let's put him as a manager. I don't know he gets to this point with Vince in charge.
What exactly is a mega push? Like, is it, because we know a mega push is Roman Reigns, but there's no way. I know there are some circles and in dark corners where people are saying LA Knight should win the Rumble and beat Roman, which to me would be the biggest mistake.
That's a huge mistake.
But there are people that are clamoring for it. But what is a mega push? Is it just winning on the roster at an extended rate? Is it what, like, because I look at mega push, I think he's going to be the guy. And I can't see it happen. I'll believe it when I see it.
When I see mega, I mean, to me, a push is you're getting wins.
Right.
A mega push to me is like you're going to be at the top of the card with a title. Now, I'm not saying you're the guy, but you're going against the Rollins. You're going against, Cody. You're in that mix. If it's a mega push, that's how I'm taking it. Like they're signing this guy and they're pushing him to the top of the card. Maybe not the tippy top, but he's going to be up there. But I'm kind of with you. Like just from WWE track record, we can read all these reports and all that all day long. And they have these plans. Best laid plans always change. So, injury, how things parse out. We'll see. We'll see if they stick with this. But
yeah, and similar to Ken Kennedy, and I keep bringing him up, but one injury away from just disappearing into the limelight and just they're gone.
Yep.
So LA Knight, I understand that right now he is someone they believe in, but just as quickly as they believe in you, they cut you off at the knees and say goodbye because injury is the biggest damnation you could have on this roster, especially Vince and everybody else, Triple H, Kevin, everybody wants longevity. They want consistency. They want you on the screen. And there's only been short fragments of time. If there's someone that can overcome getting hurt and staying on the mic, it's him because he has the charisma, but will they give him the opportunity? They probably would lose trust if he gets hurt. So
it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Agreed. We'll definitely see in the upcoming weeks, like once he moves away from this Miz feud and we have more clarity of what is he doing here on the roster and who is he going to get wins over? Because if he's getting a mega push, that means other guys are going to be behind him. Does that mean he's beating guys like Kevin Owens on TV on a weekly basis? I don't know if I buy into that.
Yeah, you got to be smart. I mean, if he's getting a mega push, he definitely can't be feuding with the Miz.
That's for damn sure. Let's get into our big story number 3 about the other company called Impact Wrestling.
Big Story 3.
Impact has hit its century mark with the 1,000th episode happening this Thursday. As a record time, spoilers are in. So if you're looking for the results of what happened on Impact 1000 during the tapings last night, they're there. You guys can check them out. I'll preview the card for you instead. So I'm not going to spoil you guys. There's a lot on this. So I'm imagining they're going to split this up into 2 weeks of tapings. That's what they historically have done at the fallout of the emergence or any of this stuff. They usually do 2 segments of tapings because there's a lot of meat on the bone here, and especially paying homage to really the history of Impact Wrestling. And on Brace for Impact, Colton and I were talking about really taking it in for a second of how monumental this is for the company, Chad.
Huge.
For a company that people thought was on its last legs for a long period of time. People were kind of saying it's going to disappear, but they've been doing great stuff on TV, but just longevity and just that impact, pun intended, it can't be understated.
Oh, this is the company that you cannot kill. There has been some dark days. If you've been watching Impact for a long time, I think back to that Destination America time frame where there were times, man, where you had to really strive to find where this was airing. I'm talking pre-Twitch, before they were, I'm talking like Destination America. Like, is this on my cable package? It survived. And 1,000 episodes, guys. This company was born out of the ashes of WCW, essentially. Like out of talent not being able to get to WWE, there was this vacuum that opened up and allowed for, Jeff Jarrett and his crew of financiers to put something together in those early days when it was on pay-per-view weekly to watch
every
so,
Wednesday.
yeah, so you had the fact that company in 2002, right, Ace, is when it launched.
Yep, 2002 was the first pay-per-view that they were doing weekly. Yep.
So like WCW closes its doors in 2001. This company kicks off, and now 1,000 episodes later, 21 years later, here we are, 1,000 episodes deep. That is a tip of the cap to them. And this is why when people, the online community of wrestling fans are just hoping for the downfall of AEW and saying, oh man, they're going to die. They might not be on TNT forever. They might not be, there might be ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys for AEW, but this is my canary in a coal mine. Impact Wrestling is my canary in a coal mine, because if they can last for 21 years with let's be honest, the leadership in this company has changed. There's been lots of turmoil. Who's running the show? Who's booking the cards? And they've managed to survive. There's a lot of ingenuity. There's a lot of survivalist tactics that Impact's employed that I think AEW is going to be fine. As long as Tony doesn't get bored with wrestling and sells it off, I think Impact is a good canary in a coal mine when you look at All Elite Wrestling's future. But tip of the cap to Impact, man. They've killed it. When everyone had them dead in the water, they still managed to push through. And you have to respect this company. They've been doing it way longer than WCW ever did it. So Impact, stop sleeping on the company, man. 1,000 episodes. Very impressive.
Funny enough that you bring up WCW, because I was thinking about it as you were talking, just about this alternate universe where WCW still existed, because they had no right going out. They were too big to fail. I think it was just one of those things. It was self-sabotage from within. They didn't want to have wrestling. It just happened to be the right people or the wrong people, depending on perspective, in those chairs making decisions, because WCW could exist in this fashion today, and they could have gone through the ebbs and flows of God knows what it would have looked like in 2002, 2003. Maybe they would have rose up. Maybe they would have continued to challenge what is a new low, but has me think of that alternate universe somewhere out there in these time, the time shifting spaces that does exist, where there's a WCW 2005 channel on Peacock.
The funny thing is, though, if you really look at those early days of Impact, like everyone likes to say, All Elite Wrestling is the WCW of today. They're making the same mistakes of WCW, and there's things there historically that you can draw parallels with, but that 2002, 2003 TNA is really just morphing out of 2000, 2001 WCW.
And it's rough for it. Yep.
It's rough. Like some of the leadership kind of shifted over into this. Like some of the choices they were making were very similar to the back end of WCW's run. There was a lot of crossover there. Sure, they did things to try and push themselves away from that and say, hey, we're different. We have a 6-sided ring. We're different over here. But TNA / Impact has really morphed. If you followed this company from the early days to now, I would argue we're in maybe the best era of the company. Now, I know like 2005 to 2009, I think, is a sweet spot when you had people like a young AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle coming over, Christian coming over. There was a lot of good stuff being done there. I even look at when Bully Ray was at the top with the Aces and Eights in 2011, 2012, that era. There was a lot of good stuff in there too. A lot of bad stuff in between. But right now, as far as just peak, we always talk about peaks and valleys. Impact right now is the most solid top to bottom and not kind of jumping the shark on certain things. They're very honed in on what they do as a company. And just as far as storytelling and match quality, they might not have that Samoa Joe, Kurt Angle type of feud, like the fervor that was there with Kurt leaving the Fed and going over there. But I think like bell to bell, it's probably the most solid Impact's ever been is right now.
Oh, I agree. And looking at the top of the roster, we talk about it every single week, trying to figure out what the main event scenes look like. There's legitimately 9 guys that probably could be the world champion sometime in the next couple of weeks. And that's what's beautiful about it. I mean, the return of Josh Alexander, he might be the best Impact world champion in history of the company. He is just lights out. You want to talk about a wrestling machine that deserves his praise? Nobody's talking about Josh Alexander, and they should be. But yeah, it might be recency bias, but we talk about it all the time. I think they have enough construction of self-made talent plus the peppering in of the historic nature of the company with nostalgia acts. It's, to me, it's a joy to watch every single week on Access. And if you guys don't know how to consume it, you can obviously check us out, Brace for Impact on Turnbuckle Tavern, checking it out. But also go on YouTube. It's $1.99 to check out them commercial free. Starts at 8:30 every Thursday. You're supporting a company that is doing great things. And if you're disenchanted with whatever's happening on the other channels, if you're like, I'm not feeling AEW, I'm not feeling WWE, as Chad said, there's really no peaks and valleys of Impact. They're kind of straightforward, and their special events are great. We're going to talk about the fallout of Victory Road in a second after I preview this card, but they've had pay-per-views pretty much, just as recent as AEW's been putting them on. We've had Emergence, we had the Multiverse show. Now we have Victory Road that happened on Friday night in White Plains. A lot of really good wrestling happening over on Impact, and they know who they are. They really honed in on not trying to outshoot who they are. And I think that is, larger conversation is they didn't have to fill the void of and shoot up to where AEW eventually went. They're comfortable in that third spot. They can reach a little forward. They can fall a little back, and they're not doing it with all this, big light pressure that AEW is doing it, because some of the criticism that Impact was inheriting from, fans in those days before AEW existed is just because they're there and they're in comparison to WWE. They'll never compare to them. And I think they finally realized that. We'll see what happens with this production increase. I think they're going to be really challenging. They're not going to reach where AEW's at, but they're certainly going to look a certain part. And I think they're going to be a great option for people to go and make significant money. It still is right now. It's awesome for the wrestling world that they do exist.
Dude, that third spot's a sweet spot to be in, because they're able to just kind of be over here in the third spot doing their thing without any pressure, where when you're in that number 2 spot, it's constant comparisons to WWE. We are not this company. I don't see a lot of online IWC hate being directed at Impact. They get to quietly do their thing without all of this. And I don't know, man. I one thing about you kind of alluded to it, how they do, they have their own roster and they kind of pepper in guys who were underused in other companies who have came over, mixed with their history. That's the thing this company has that even AEW and companies that are maybe a little bigger than them, they have 21 years of history to pull from. They can have those callbacks. They can pull a guy that a hardcore Impact TNA fan can be like, they have the history. I know Tom was critical of Impact, saying that it's just a bunch of people from WWE that couldn't hack it. And
it's just not even close to that anymore. Maybe back in 2005, not anymore.
No, because I think you see like Dirty Dango, Fandango in WWE. He goes over there. He's got something to give us as a wrestler. Like, he's doing great work that I love that there's a place where you can elevate guys that WWE didn't see something in. And then you get a Heath coming over, you get a Brian Myers coming over. All of that adds to this company where you can say that's lesser than, but I think it's like, no, they can take a talent that this booker doesn't see anything in. One man's trash is another man's treasure type of thing. And I think Impact does great with homegrown performers that they make themselves, and then giving a place for other companies that didn't see something, they can hone in and give a performer a new lease on life. 1,000 episodes history. I think it's great. I love it.
So the card that we have here, and again, they'll probably be split into 2 tapings over the course of the next 2 weeks, but the 1,000th episode that will be airing next week ultimately should have the Impact World Championship being defended. Alex Shelley taking on Trey Miguel. We have Team 3D, Bully Ray and Devon teaming together for the first time in 7 years, probably in a squash match. We get a mixed tag team match, Frank Kazarian and Tracy Brooks taking on Eddie Edwards and Alicia Edwards. We have this big 10-man tag women's match, Trinity, Jordan Grace, Gail Kim, Awesome Kong, and a mystery partner versus Deonna Purrazzo, Angelina Love, Giselle Shaw, Savannah Evans, and another mystery partner. So you'll be very, very, let's say you're going to be pleasantly surprised when you see the spoilers of who's there. So make sure you guys check it out. Jake Something versus the aforementioned Dirty Dango, the return of Ultimate X, Feast or Fired, America's Most Wanted appearing. Mostly, they're going to do a little bit of what the Raw reunion shows did, paying tribute to Awesome Kong and Gail Kim and America's Most Wanted, Team 3D, but they're going to give you a lot of good action in the ring, and that's what you get every single week, baked into, if you're watching on YouTube, no commercials. It is flies by, and again, you guys can check it out, Brace for Impact. We talk about the most in-depth Impact podcast you're going to find anywhere.
Yeah,
Colton and I go an hour and a half in talking about it, so I'm looking forward to watching it and really just kind of celebrating what Impact was and is.
That's a hell of an episode. Bringing in, showcasing your current talent while also tipping the cap to the history of the company, getting people like Gail Kim, Awesome Kong. I'm sure those mystery partners are going to be pretty compelling, and even giving us taste of Jake Something Dirty Dango and that mid-card feud. That's what I love. They're building top to bottom storylines, and you got America's Most Wanted, one of the iconic early tag teams that really James Storm, Chris Harris, like ripping it up, and Team 3D. It's cool, man. It's cool to have a historic moment like this.
So Victory Row was on Friday, kind of before this celebration of 1,000 episodes for Impact. They had this pay-per-view, and it was a really awesome card. And I was in the Turnbuckle chat, just kind of, a few beers deep, waxing poetic about Impact, love and life, and just really enjoying what I was watching. But go out and check this out on the Impact Plus app. There's some great matches I just want to talk about here and highlight. We'll go through some of the results and not go too in depth. We'll go on that on the Impact show. But the X Division Championship was defended. Lio Rush defeated Kushida to retain. This match was everything you expected and more. Lio Rush and Kushida are absolutely just next level. And we know right now Kushida is, where his history was. He kind of fell into this role as a guy who's just a stepping block for whoever's defending the title. But anytime he's in the ring, he absolutely just crushes it. Honestly, I think right now Kushida is kind of understated in a lot of ways. People don't really talk about him enough, but he's just as strong as any of your favorites in the ring. And he has charisma. He's doing the time splitter gimmick coming out there like Marty McFly.
Yeah.
And he's ripping it up. And Lio Rush, dude, man, this guy, I talk about him all the time on Brace for Impact. He moves faster than anybody else. He's like 1.7 speed. Running the ropes just looks amazing to him. Everything is so crisp with Lio Rush, and his run as X Division champion has been a lot of fun. We also had Tommy Dreamer defeating Kenny King. This was a digital media championship match versus career, and he wound up winning the championship. All smoke and mirrors because Tommy Dreamer is long in the tooth, as we know. And it wasn't a hardcore match, so he couldn't really hide it in there. But Kenny King showed a little bit of his skill set here that is different than we usually see him just ripping up the ring. He was able to find a way to accentuate the strengths of Tommy Dreamer, and this was a kind of a tribute match to Terry Funk, both literally and figuratively for Tommy Dreamer, where he was literally wearing tights that were
he had the pants,
shirts, and everything like that. But this was heartwarming. I walked away like smiling. And Tommy Dreamer, if you love ECW, you love Tommy Dreamer, you have to go out and watch this. And that's all you need sometimes to feel good about watching wrestling.
Yeah, Tommy Dreamer's almost became like the mascot of just fandom. If you listen to Busted Open Radio, you know that Tommy is like the biggest fan of pro wrestling. Like maybe he's not the biggest star when it comes from a performer standpoint, but fans love him, and Tommy loves pro wrestling. I thought this was great. A great way to not end his career. I feel like there's better ways to send Tommy Dreamer off, and I like that they put it on him here. I think it's a good move.
There was conversation that he might do it because he was hyping up that this was the first place he ever watched a wrestling show. This is one of the first times he wrestled in front of a live audience. I believe, there was a chance. I'm glad it's not. And it's cool he gets another championship to put under his resume, which is cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
With the Impact World Tag Team Championship match, the Rascals, Trey Miguel, and Zachary Wentz defeated the Motor City Machine Guns, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin. And really the story of this match is the Rascals couldn't help themselves but cheat. And the Motor City Machine Guns showed why they are the class of the tag division. Great story inside of the match. Ultimately, the Rascals wound up cheating to win. And all the little things Shelly and Sabin do in the ring to set them apart is just amazing. And I'm going to be lucky enough to be this weekend. If you guys are in the area, Deer Park, New York, the Motor City Machine Guns themselves are going to be in town. That's for Remarkable Wrestling. So it's going to be an honor and a privilege to be sharing the building with them. So it's going to be awesome. And this match was great. I love the Rascals. Love what they're doing. This was awesome. And this kudos to Impact as well. This is the second pay-per-view in a row that didn't defend their world championship.
Kudos to Impact as well to book a heel tag team and have them consistently cheating like that. It's an old school way to book heels. They cheat. Let them cheat. Let them get out by the skin of their teeth. I'm super high on the Rascals right now. I think both of those guys seem rejuvenated and they're locked in. They're super locked in, especially Zachary Wentz coming off of, being fired from NXT. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder and a point to prove. And I'm loving the passion these guys are bringing in with these characters.
And the main event of the evening was kind of a surprise to see this main eventing, but when you saw the match, you realized why it was main event because I don't think anything could have followed it. Josh Alexander defeated Steve Macklin, and this match was absolutely fantastic. And Josh Alexander in a big match is something I miss greatly when he was out with the torn triceps. And also kudos to Steve Macklin, who rose to the occasion in that void that was created with Alexander's injury, taking on that interim championship.
And I thought he showed out in this match.
This match was fantastic. This followed to me the formula of a big G1 match with big near falls, just absolutely hard hitting action. And you didn't know where there was a lot of spots in the match where it could have ended either way. And Steve Macklin had Alexander beat at some point, but this was awesome. Nothing on the line, but just pure pride. And sometimes that's all you need. The competitive nature of Josh Alexander was showing through, and he's destined to hold that Impact World Championship somewhere down the line, if not sooner than later. Will it be at Bound for Glory? Who knows? I think there's more meat on the bone with Shelly and Sabin potentially wrestling each other for the title. But Josh Alexander is the guy, and you put everything in him because to me, before he got hurt, he was taking that Impact World Championship up to levels that we haven't seen before, where people were talking about the matches he was having, the match with Eric Young. Everything was so prestigious, and it's so great to have him back from that injury. And the walking weapon is a welcomed addition to the Impact roster again.
Yeah, he had that awesome Broadway where he went 60 minutes.
Yep.
And we always shout out good booking in making lemonade out of lemons. Like Macklin is a great example of they took this guy who was on the mid card, fired from NXT, came over to the company. They slowly built him. And then when Alexander went down, this guy stepped up into a primo position, and now you have another guy at the top of the card who is a contender. I believe in Macklin. I like what he's doing. At first, I got to be honest, when he first came over to the company, it's like, what are they doing with this guy? He's just going to be another bland, what's the story? But they've built him to a point where I think he's a legit top card guy for Impact. And I love seeing them do, build new talent in the face of shitty situations.
Oh, 100%. And some other notable results we'll go through here. PCO defeated Bully Ray in a no DQ match. Impact World Championship. The Knockouts World Championship. Trinity defended successfully against Alicia Edwards. Crazy Steve defeated Black Taurus. The Impact Knockouts World Tag Team Championship was defended. MK Ultra, which is Moss Slamovich and Killer Kelly, defeated Giselle Shaw and Savannah Evans with Jay Vidal in their corner. And the returning Jordan Grace finally got a win over Deonna Purrazzo. She now has the win in 5 matches. She's 1-4. Really good match. But looking at the booking, we'll talk about this more on Brace for Impact. This is the third big loss that Deonna Purrazzo has taken in a year, where before that she really was kind of unbeatable as the Knockouts Women's Champion. So we'll see where they're going with Deonna, but Jordan Grace being back certainly puts a wrinkle in that. You would think Jordan Grace and Trinity are destined for a collision course at the biggest show of the year, Bound for Glory.
Yeah, I think that's what they're building towards. Deonna, she had a reign, man. She was holding that AAA title, I believe, and Impact title. She was the top of the heap in the company for a good stretch, but her taking the back seat a little bit to bring up Trinity in this division, and I think it's a good move, but you can't let her get lost in the sauce either.
And I'm pretty sure she has a major bendy that just came out too. So
Yeah.
pretty good stuff. But let's get to our quick hitters and talk about all the other news in wrestling. Quick hitters. First news here for our quick hitters. We have a dream match that's going to be happening, God willing, between Bryan Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. at what is going to be Danielson's hometown of Seattle, October 1st, 2023. We have Wrestle Dream, the first iteration of this. This was made on Collision last night where Danielson issued a challenge to Sabre. Of course, Zack Sabre Jr. hasn't accepted, but you'd imagine he's waiting to do this. This was originally supposed to happen at Forbidden Door 2022, but we saw Danielson got hurt, pulled off the show due to injury, and then we got Claudio replacing Danielson in the match, making his debut by defeating Sabre. Just for perspective of this, and I know not everyone puts all the weight into Dave Meltzer and the Observer Newsletter Awards, but Danielson or Sabre have won the best technical wrestler in Wrestling Observer Newsletter for the past, 18 years.
Crazy.
No one's won that award except for these two dudes. And the award was recently renamed the Bryan Danielson Award because of that, because of when he had to retire from in-ring competition back in 2016. And then since returning in 2018, he's won it twice more. So these two are, put stock in whatever you want to put stock in. There's something to be said about them being the two best wrestlers, technical or otherwise, in the ring going today.
Yeah, this is a dream match. Absolutely. We've been wanting to see this for a long time. Zack Sabre Jr. is essentially like the British version of Danielson working in New Japan. The fact that we're getting this at Wrestle Dream is exciting. The fact that it's going to be in Danielson's home state, the crowd's going to be electric for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. There is a little bit, when Danielson announced him wanting this match on Collision this past weekend, there was a little bit of a melancholy there because he announced this might be his last year. He said that he told his little girl when she turns 7, he'll start winding his career down. She's 6 years old right now. He says he's going to go out and make this one of the most memorable years of his career. To kick off with Zack Sabre Jr. in this final run is pretty impressive. I hope him telling his daughter he's going to start winding his career down, I hope that means he might take a match here or there and still kind of be involved in the backstage booking of it. I know Tony wants that. So there's a little bit of a melancholy around this match, just knowing that, okay, we're beginning his final run. But outside of that, what a way to kick off a final run.
So Wrestle Dream will be the first time that Zack Sabre Jr. and Bryan Danielson will touch in a ring for the first time since 2009. But obviously, both these guys are completely different. They've had a long longevity, and building their resumes has happened in the past, since that time. So much has been accomplished. I mean, Danielson main evented a WrestleMania since that time, and Zack Sabre Jr. has been accomplishing a lot. He's the current New Japan Pro Wrestling World TV Champion. He's been carrying that title with a lot of prestige. Let's hope this match happens, and let's keep both these dudes in the glass case until that time, because I need to see this match on the big stage. On Friday, we had WWE holding its first show in India since 2017. So the GMC Bala Yogi Indoor Stadium in Hyderabad, India, forgive me if I mispronounced it, played host to the WWE Superstar Spectacle 2023. Untelevised event here, so it didn't happen. The card looked like a glorified house show. And yeah, your thoughts on this going to India? To me, India, there was talks about them potentially hosting a WrestleMania at some point, but the crowd wasn't as impressive as you'd imagine, and this had no buzz on it at all.
Yeah, they obviously want to placate India because it's such a big TV market. They're popular on TV, but I've heard Meltzer talk about the live sporting culture in India is not a big thing. Like, they're outside of, I believe, cricket.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get a lot of turnout for big fan. It's just not in their culture, I guess, to go to these big things. So I when they announced this event, there were several reports saying it's probably, even though this country has one of the largest TV ratings for WWE, as far as millions of people watch, the turnout probably isn't going to reflect that, just because culturally they're not going to live wrestling shows like the States or UK or Japan. So It does look like a glorified house show, but for these guys, the fans that do want to go see it live, it was probably a big deal. We don't get these shows. We get to see these people. So good on them for, crushing that international market. India, if you can tap into India, I think that's why AEW brought in Satnam Singh. It's like that's a window into that. So smart business move.
And the most newsworthy thing from this was Becky Lynch was supposed to be appearing here, but she noticed a tiny tear in her passport, and it prevented her from being able to board the plane to India, so she was unable to be there. Not that it really mattered. I mean, I'm sure she would have liked to be there. They played a video on the screen about her, but like I said, I mean, maybe she would have been involved in this world title picture. Like Natalia wound up getting a shot. Matches that really kind of live in a vacuum. Remember back in the day for the Saudi shows where they didn't have any sequential nature or canon to WWE. This felt like that as well. Like Gunther defeated Shanky. When was the last time we saw Shanky on our TV? Braun Breaker defeated Odyssey Jones. Like that's a Taz created character.
Right.
John Cena and Seth Rollins teaming up to defeating the Imperium, Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci in the main event. So, it is what it is. I mean, again, I'm happy that the crowd was able to get a live show there, but this holds no stake in the WWE canon. This is how the Saudi shows used to be. So we'll see where it goes. Maybe down the line, they'll be involved in a major pay-per-view that's driving story, but not now.
Yeah.
And NWA announced the pay-per-view for October, and you guys were talking about this on the flagship, and I love the name. So NWA announced that Sam Hain will take place on Saturday, October 28th, 2023 from Cleveland, Ohio. Don't have a venue yet. We know it's not going to be the Gund Arena. It's going to have to be a smaller arena, but NWA trying to stay relevant here. I know they've been in the news negatively recently. We saw finally they take the title of Tyrus, put it on EC3. But yeah, Sam Hain's a cool name for a pay-per-view. And shout out to my good friend Sam Hain from Remarkable Wrestling. Love that dude.
Yeah, good pay-per-view name. They need to make some good choices. EC3 holding him. Not a big EC3 fan, but him taking it off of Tyrus is a good thing. Lean into some of these fan favorites that you've worked with. Get Matt Cardona in there. Bring some eyes to your company. Some negative stuff. I think there were Aldis had some words for Billy Corgan, and Velvet Sky just recently left the company as a commentator. Not saying it was from a negative point of view, but I'd like to see them get back to that pre-pandemic NWA power run they were on, because it was so special, and I feel like they've got away from their opening philosophy a little bit.
So similar to the G1 Climax, WWE seems to be having their own version of it with the NXT Global Heritage Invitational. So we're going to cover the standings. I feel like it's worthy of it. The matches have been really good. So give you guys an update. Right now, Joe Coffey has now earned 4 points in WWE NXT's Global Heritage Invitational, and a tournament match between Coffey and Akira Tozawa aired on Friday's episode of NXT Level Up. By defeating Tozawa, Coffey improved his record to 2-0, and Tozawa fell to 0-2 in the tournament. So looking at the groups, we have 2 instead of 4, just like the G1. Group A, we got Butch leading the charge here with 3 points, 1 win, 1 draw, 0 losses. Axiom has 1 point, 0 wins, and 1 draw. Tyler Bate and Charlie Dempsey have yet to have a match here. Actually, Charlie Dempsey had 1 loss, but Tyler Bate has yet to wrestle yet. Group B's Joe Coffey, 2 wins and no losses or draws. Nathan Frazier, 2 points with 1 win and 1 loss. Duke Hudson pulling up the rear here with 2 points, 1 win and 1 loss. And Akira Tozawa sitting at 0-2. And Bate versus Axiom and Tozawa versus Frazier is set to take place on NXT this Tuesday. So just so you guys put perspective on this, the winner of Group A will face the winner of Group B on Tuesday, September 26th, NXT. And the winner of the match advances to challenge Noam Dar for the Heritage Cup at NXT No Mercy on Saturday, September 30th. And we now know, obviously, the rules have different than the G1, where the Invitational will have a 12-minute time limit. So victories are worth 2 points, draws are worth 1. I like that they're doing this. Maybe this is like a breeding ground or just experimental to see if they can bring this to the main roster, because the stakes are not high. Who cares about the Heritage Cup that he's going to be taking on Noam Dar? If this was a tournament they did inside the WWE for a big title, whether it be the world or IC title, and the winner of that gets the challenge at, say, SummerSlam or something, I think there's a lot of weight to it. Or even a title shot at WrestleMania. Do this throughout the summer, set the IC title match up for later down the line, and you can even defend that throughout the rest of the year, like they do with the G1 Climax, and we'll see how they handle it. But this is really cool, and I like it, and I want to cover it here.
It's good in theory for the main roster, but it just seems so out of what they do.
True.
something like this, though, I do think makes NXT feel special. It makes it feel different, and it's a great way to build up that talent there. If the main roster would do it, it would be awesome. But I think the NXT crowd, it's a little more of a hardcore crowd, where the casuals of the main roster, I think they would be worried to do it, that people wouldn't buy into the style of the tournament and the points and everything. I would, but I would be shocked if the main roster, Triple H would bring a style of tournament like this onto the main roster.
It'd be so much fun, but you're right. I mean, putting together like 4 groups really on a WWE television. Think about the groups you'd be making. It'd be insane work rate wise, and giving some guys to shine, because that is the best part about G1, is having guys come up from underneath and guys you didn't really expect, and they can make a career off of that in the launch point. We talk about that being an entry level into superstardom that could be used on the main roster. Doing a Global Heritage Invitational on Raw or SmackDown would be cool, but we'll keep waiting and holding our breath. But
yeah,
we have Ace Steel being released by AEW. We promised to cover some Phil Brooks stuff, and this is close to it. And PW Insider reported he was released Thursday morning. Duh. Like, I mean, he's not going to be there without Punk, so not much here to talk about. So they released him. He got back pay from this time not on the roster, but
smart move.
With Punk on.
Smart move. You don't want an inside mole funneling stuff and continuing hostility. There is a part of me, it's like, it's a shame that Punk doing this caused a guy to lose his job, but I mean, he was wrapped up in the brawl out situation. I think he was working remotely anyway, so it just makes sense for all parties. For
just don't bite people, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
They have your job, dude.
Yeah, don't bite a main eventer.
Yeah, I mean, is that so much to ask?
Yeah.
We have an update for the domestic violence charges on BJ Whitmer. There's a lot to this story, but not going to cover in depth, but just pretty much just want to give you guys the update on the 45-year-old spending some time in jail. So the former AEW coach and producer was arrested back on June 4th. He was charged with first-degree strangulation and second-degree burglary. He spent 8 days in prison before making bail, and then he was released by AEW shortly after the news. So according to police reports, there's a lot on the table for this. Like that, it holds a lot of weight to it. So it seems like Fightful reported that he was indicted on the above-mentioned charges at a hearing on Wednesday, September 6th, and he's set for pre-trial on October 6th for sentencing. So seems like he's going to be spending significant time in jail. Obviously, AEW cut bait immediately, so everything dropped on June 4th. He was released on June 12th when it became public knowledge, and they released a statement saying that he's been terminated following his arrest.
And the police report's pretty damning, graphic and damning. Like, he threw his lady down on the couch and was strangling her, and she said she was literally fighting for her life, and I think he squeezed tighter and was pretty much said, "I'm going to fucking kill you." That's all from the police report. So to me, lock him up, throw away the key. Do not tolerate stuff like this. I think it gives combat athletes, when things like this happens, whether it's a pro wrestler, a mixed martial artist, or a boxer, it's a black eye on the sport. It makes you think these testosterone driven guys are just all animals when that's not the case at all. For the most part, but you will have these guys like that. This is just society in general. You can't have a guy like this getting away with it. So I say, lock him up.
Yeah, put him under the jail. But we have the voices of TNA Impact Wrestling are set to take their rightful place in the company's Hall of Fame. So during Victory Road, it was revealed that Mike Tenay and Don West will be inducted into the Impact Hall of Fame at Bound for Glory in October. Obviously, Don West is going to be posthumously inducted. He obviously passed away tragically December 2022 after his battle with cancer. Huge history. Mike Tenay, I mean, we covered WCW 1996, and he was a huge voice that was providing insight into some of the international talent coming overseas to WCW. He was great. I mean, we talk about the soundtrack to wrestling, and they need to have their place into lore because the product would not be the same without them. This goes for all wrestling companies down the line. So those moments you remember so fondly are because of the soundtracks of the Jim Rosses, the Jerry the King Lawler. It's Don West, Mike Tenay for Impact. And these guys were tied with the product, and they're essential to what we're watching on TV. So well-deserved. This Impact Hall of Fame's kind of new here, introduced back in 2012, and there's only been 13 inductees, Chad.
Yeah, and it's a who's who of the biggest names: Sting, Angle, 3D, Team 3D, Jeff Jarrett, Earl Hebner, Gail Kim, Abyss, Ken Shamrock, Awesome Kong, Raven, and now this year, Mike Today and Don West. That's a hell of a crew, and I think it's good for companies to have this to kind of tip their cap to the people that built the company. And like you said, Today and Don West, they were that team, that tandem that when I think of Impact, that's the voices I hear.
Well, speaking of the Dudley Boys, they signed a Legends deal with WWE. So they were talking to Justin Barrasso of SI, promoting the Impact 1000 special on Saturday, and they revealed some news they probably thought was common knowledge, but it wasn't. They revealed that they signed a new WWE Legends contract a little while ago. This was kind of just pulled apart because most of the conversation in this SI interview with Justin Barrasso was to hype up Impact, and Devon saying it was the more significant time in their career because they spent more time there in ECW and WWE, that they thought it was their best time as wrestlers. And, talking about their run there, saying that they had a better run in TNA than WWE, which, may be a good debate question, but there's a lot to be said here about this Legends deal. And I talked about the stakes here where maybe it's an inroad for WWE and Impact to be working together, because the Dudley Boys being featured here in Impact, that's a move of good faith if they have a deal that's exclusive with WWE.
Now, I have a question about this, though, because everyone I'm hearing talking about it is making it seem like signing this Legends deal means they are exclusively back with WWE. Is that the case? I thought, isn't there wrestlers out there that have Legends deal that still work with other companies? Is this signaling that Bully Ray is no longer working with Impact?
I mean, he was kind of written off Victory Road with this PCO stuff, but I think there's a lot to be said about the language in there. Could just be merchandising where they're going to sell the shirts again. Hopefully they sell those tie-dye shirts, because those never were released in WWE. I would like the tie-dye Dudley Boys Classic shirt. I will buy that one, $30 or whatever it costs, soft goods. I will definitely buy that shirt. But you're right. I think the language needs to be clear. But we noticed that the Legends deal for Bret Hart prevented him from appearing on AEW television. So it just might be the bad blood between the two companies. They don't like each other. And right. Impact, we know that WWE and Impact have a relationship that's working. We saw Mickie James show up on the Rumble with the Knockouts Championship. That wouldn't happen with the AEW Women's Championship ever. So you're right. I think we need to see the fine details, but feels like they're going to be back in some capacity. Ultimately, merchandising be for there, but they maybe have one-off appearances to give somebody else the rub. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm really torn on this, because if they sign a Legends deal, we get figures, we get merchandise. I'm all for it. It's awesome. But with Devon Dudley recently suffering that stroke not too long ago, and it looked pretty touch and go with him from a health standpoint, I can't see them coming back into the company and having a run, even if it's just putting over talent. I don't think Devon's up for that much, so if you're taking Bully Ray out of the work he was doing in Impact, out of the work he was doing in NWA, just to go back and kind of sit on the sidelines again and not be able to work with these companies, I don't know, man. I think Bully Ray was doing a lot to help these other companies, and the dude got in some of the best shape of his life here recently. So I'm torn. I hope it's a deal where we get the merch, we get the figures, we get things like that, but they can still do their thing with Impact. I don't know. I'm kind of torn on this.
No, I agree with you. I actually didn't even think about that far down the line, because it was a foregone conclusion that Bully Ray would be wherever he wanted to be with the Busted Open Radio stuff. And I'd imagine it didn't impact that at all either, because he has free reign to say what he wants there. And being under the WWE banner sort of has its limitations, I'm sure.
Right.
But that's all. I mean, money talks, though. Like they probably offered life-changing money with, especially we're going to talk about the story after this with the merger and all the stuff with the money, the influx, and their value. The Dudleys deserve to have being paid their royalties for things being sold, even for guys that aren't on the roster. Like you mentioned, Devon's not going to be able to be active. Definitely not. Bully Ray, I think a lot of what they're going to be doing on the show, if they ever show up, would be a reunion show where they get in the face of a tag team, give a rub, maybe pat them on the back, accompany them to the ring, something like that. But you're right. I think a lot of it should be merchandise. And as long as Bully Ray wants to be active, he should have the right to be doing that in Impact, NWA, the independents.
Yeah, because let's be honest, this is the final run for him.
Yeah.
You know, like he's still at a point where he can I feel like he's actively contributed to Impact in big ways. Where if you pull him out of that, I just want to see the language of these Legends deals. Like, what does it, obviously, like you said, with Bret Hart and AEW, it prevented that. But I wonder if that's more of, you know, being in that number 2 spot where Impact kind of is a world in its own. That number 3 spot is a sweet spot to be in. Hopefully this doesn't just put Bully Ray on the shelf where the only way we get to enjoy him is to buy his t-shirts and his figures.
I agree with you. And Colton and I had a conversation on Brace for Impact about maybe a potential working relationship between WWE and Impact, and not in the forbidden door fashion, because that kind of says they're on the same level. I think back like ECW function back in the early 90s, you could have Impact being a breeding ground for talent that maybe is not getting the love on NXT or on the main roster, have them go and cement their craft there. And also vice versa, sending some of the hottest acts in Impact to get a showing out. And just put the Impact banner there, carrying that banner and at least putting it there or wearing the shirts or something could bring eyes to a product and show WWE an inclusive nature of working together with other companies where they're not going to do with AEW. They can, you know, get the good grace of the fans saying they're doing with Impact.
Well, you mentioned, you know, the deal they had with Mickey James recently, but they've had a pretty friendly back and forth for a long time. This goes all the way back when they did the trade with Ric Flair and Christian. You know, when Christian went over to that company, there was some sort of like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours thing that sent Christian over there. And even the Ken Shamrock's we just talked about the Hall of Fame. Ken Shamrock, The Rock, was in there. So there's a little bit of a friendly thing going on there that maybe they can make this work too.
Yeah, it's like a little brother. They just like, you know, never a threat to us, so we'll play nice.
Exactly.
We have Endeavor's WWE UFC merger sets a date to close deals. So we have the Endeavor Group Holdings Incorporated, which is UFC's parent company, and WWE said today they expect their previously agreed deal to form a new sports entertainment company called TKO Group Holdings Incorporated, and it will fully close on September 12th, which should be tomorrow. And TKO will begin trading on the New York Stock Exchange once the transaction is complete. So the other things aside from it coming, we knew this was happening. We knew it was just a matter of a date. But the agreement says McMahon's set to become the executive chairman of the new organization, while Dana White will retain his role as president of UFC. Nick Khan's going to be switching from CEO of WWE to the president of WWE, and Emmanuel will become the CEO of TKO. So follow all that, guys. So just be shifting chairs. Everyone has all their power that they used to have. Vince McMahon, I mean, the beginning of this year, the dude was written out of wrestling. Now he's the executive chairman of TKO, brother.
It's a pretty shocking development if you really break all this down. So in the power structure of TKO Group Holdings, you've got Ari Emanuel at the absolute top as the man. And then underneath him, you've got Vincent Kennedy McMahon as the executive chairman. And what's funny about that is Shane tried to convince Vince to buy the UFC back when it was for sale, and the Fertittas and Dana White bought it and made it into what it is. Vince didn't pull the trigger on that. Now, 20 years later, he finds himself as the executive chairman of a company that owns UFC and WWE. The guy played the long game. He got what he wanted. It seems like that happens a lot. But under Ari and Vince, then you've got your two figurehead presidents, Nick Khan in WWE, Dana White in UFC. So this is a fascinating development for me that Vince is. I really, truly don't think Vince is going to be making any decisions from a UFC perspective. I think this was more of like a contractual, we have to do this to make the deal go through. Vince has to have a little more power. I just can't see Vince. I don't think Ari wants to upset the apple cart and have Vince McMahon making decisions with the UFC when the UFC is rolling so well right now.
And I believe we'll be playing the drop they have on the Rodan when someone gets fired, because they're going to be impending cuts with a merger. You know, they're going to be cutting, whether it be in-office staff or on-screen talent. That will be coming down the line. So fully expect the doom and gloom feeling they're feeling among WWE employees is probably well just, because that usually happens, and probably the right move anyway, because you have to fine tune what's going on in the organization. And there's other people that have decision-making powers now. With Ari Emanuel, he might have a different feel about where he wants it to go. And ultimately he's going to give the power to Vince to do what he wants and Nick Khan to do what he wants. But this dude is going to have the final say. He's the top of the mountain here.
He's the top of the mountain. Now, if you followed the way he kind of took over UFC, he is a stand back and let the guys who made this successful do their thing. He doesn't really interfere with the day-to-day of UFC. Dana White is the one kind of running the show. So I don't think you have to worry about Ari coming in and booking LA Knight in a world title angle, brother. I don't think he's going to be doing that. But he will be making cuts. I don't think you have to worry about top tier talent being cut, but I think it's going to be mostly like roles being combined, getting rid of excess positions and consolidating things in the front office portion of it. But I don't think there's a complete lack of fear. Like, there could be talent cuts. I just don't think it's going to be anything to write home about. I think it's mainly front office stuff.
So speaking of WWE, we have a lot of conversation about where the TV product will live. And Fox recently canceled its Out of Character WWE podcast, which typically featured interviews with WWE talent, as well as recaps of WWE's weekly programming. And Wrestling Observer Newsletter kind of came up with the decision and interpreted that as a sign by some of the working relationship between WWE and Fox may be coming to an end. So we do know that Fox pretty much has all the rights. And it was interesting listening to Wrestling Observer Radio from this past weekend, where they talk about where the rights could live. Potentially ABC's in the running, Amazon Prime's in the running. You know, we talked about in the past, Netflix, maybe they make the move and do full streaming for their product. And we know no matter what, WWE's future on Fox has been called into question because Fox may not want to re-up the broadcast rights to WWE SmackDown. And the new TV deal is approaching, and they want an increase, WWE does, for what they were getting paid. And the current $205 million per year, now they want somewhere between 300 and 310. Fox may not see that number as something they could do, which leaves it open to guys like, you know, ABC is a floundering broadcast channel. They need something there. Yep. So maybe they pull the trigger and say, let's go with WWE. We know we're going to get a certain amount of people to watch and have eyes on our product.
Yeah, I mean, WWE's in a sweet spot where they have a lot of suitors and they're going to put their price down, and I don't think they're going to budge on it. I really don't. I think they're going to put what they want out there, and whoever's willing to pay is going to pay it. Maybe that's Fox. I think a lot of this is just kind of people speculating about this WWE podcast being canceled. It may be nothing, but it does open the door for speculation.
The other thing they were talking about, and it warrants a further conversation down the line, but Amazon Prime, if they come into this, TV ratings are going to take a deep, deep dive, because you're not going to have people that are finding. There's a lot of the old head crowd that watches wrestling that just turns on the TV. You're getting a lot of people stumbling into the product. It's hard to stumble upon Amazon Prime if you're not intending to get there. But if they offer him, say, if they're looking for 310 and say Amazon Prime offers number out there, 400, are they willing to just kind of take a dive on the ratings and have the guaranteed money per year? Are they too focused on having that prestige of doing 2.5 million people on Fox? Like what's more valuable to them?
Yeah, live wrestling and live sports really is kind of the final frontier of cable. Like once those go, you see YouTube offering the Sunday ticket. You know, when these deals with NBA and NFL come up from a just week-to-week game standpoint, once those things start shifting over into live sports that Netflix is supposedly queuing up to do, Max is queuing up to do, once the streaming services get into the live sporting talk and live wrestling talk, dark days for cable.
So we referenced before the new NWA pay-per-view coming up. We said that people have been talking about NWA in a negative way, and Nick Aldis recently had some harsh words for Billy Corgan. And he said, quote, "The evidence is there for anyone who wants to look. I'm sort of done talking about Billy and that whole thing. I would just say that he's shown everybody who he is, and that's unfortunate. I'm certainly not going to spend any more time saying anything sort of denigrating about him or the company or anything like that. People can make up their own minds, and it looks like a lot of them have." Your thoughts on this, Chad? I mean, Nick Aldis left. He was the golden goose for NWA for the longest time, and now that relationship that has been split, everyone's assuming that they didn't like each other. This is kind of damning evidence that Nick Aldis and Billy Corgan was not as amicable split that maybe some people were hoping for.
Oh yeah, it was bad blood because I think Nick Aldis took umbrage with the way Corgan kind of promoted and pushed the Empowered pay-per-view with the female wrestling pay-per-view they put on, and he felt that he disrespected Mickie James, which is Aldis's wife, and the way he kind of booked Aldis out of the title, it just didn't make sense with Tyrus getting the title. And you've heard other people say this. I know Zicky Dice just showed up there and worked with them again, but when he exited, he had beef with Billy. So this isn't just from Nick. That's why if it was just Nick, it's like, well, maybe it was just a clashing of personalities. But when you hear other talent kind of echoing the same sentiment, it makes you wonder what's really going on behind the scenes.
We also have Jade Cargill, and paired with this is, we'll talk about her return on Collision last night. She comments on if she stays in touch with Tony Khan, and her quote was very interesting because she said, quote, "I am always, I mean, he's a phenomenal boss. I could hit him up right now. He'll probably hit me back in 3 minutes. This is a man who has 4 companies, a professional soccer team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's busy. He literally comes to every show. He's so passionate. He loves our company. There's no place I'd rather be. He doesn't look at me as a number. He looks at me as a human being. He knows my journey. He understands my purpose in the wrestling community and what I want to achieve. And I don't think you can beat that." This was paired with her return on TV. Everyone was kind of saying that she's done with the company, that, you know, she's going to go to WWE. She's back, man. She's back. Saturday in Collision, she came out to confront Chris Statlander, and she held up the championship, threw it on Statlander's chest. And we can talk about the breakdown of that another time. You guys can talk about it on the podcast, where we think Jade Cargill's direction is and all that. But the main thing here is she's here to stay, and paired with that quote, it seems like she's here to stay for good.
Well, I mean, and this isn't something I know money talks, and everyone's going to say, yeah, but if WWE throws that money at her, I get that. That's kind of with everything. Money talks. AEW has money too. And this isn't something that's a new quote from her. When she was on Jericho's Talk is Jericho podcast, like a year and a half ago, she was echoing these same sentiments. The way she was treated at her Performance Center kind of tryout situation, she didn't like the way she was handled. It kind of soured her on the process. I know things can change. Fences can be mended, but she's kind of rocked this philosophy with this company from day one in all of her interviews. It's very kind of similar to what you hear come out of Darby Allin's mouth. When Darby Allin talks about All Elite Wrestling, he's like, I don't need to go anywhere else. This company gets me. They let me be me. And I want to help this company grow. And honestly, you hear that from Jade, you hear that from Darby, you hear that from MJF here recently saying a lot of the same things. So that is the lifeblood of a company like this, is to keep these originals happy so they can be kind of the foundational pillars of your company you're building. Going back to our big story with Impact, that's what made Impact viable early on, is they had those guys that did not leave. I know he eventually left, but the AJ Styles, the Samoa Joes, those were guys in the early days. They were TNA through and through. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I don't see Jade leaving anytime soon. It could always happen. Never say never, but I think she's here to stay for a long while. So
we have another news story here that kind of paved its path on Rampage on Friday, which maybe if you didn't watch Rampage, you didn't see this, but it's well worth the watch. Mike Santana is ready to chart his own path as a singles wrestler. And we had this discussed in a video on AEW Rampage, which Santana said he's going to be a singles wrestler from going forward. And this video, shooting from the hip here, so the road I've chosen is to take one that must be taken on my own. No crutch, no crew, straight dolo, exactly how I like it. all I've done my entire life is bet on myself. But I'll tell you this, I'm not here to be another guy in the game. I'm here to be the guy. So this was returned with a back and forth on X between Ortiz, where they were having this discourse in the public domain about their well-versed. Everyone knows about the issues between Proud and Powerful that we've seen kind of crop up here, where they were not on TV together. We thought maybe they buried the hatchet because they were able to work together for Stadium Stampede with the return. To me, this kind of looks like they're working a shoot into an angle here where they wouldn't do this well-produced video if these dudes weren't okay working together. And I think the first feud that they're going to have as singles wrestlers is against each other.
They should do that. I hope that's the case. I know they've had issues. When I was watching All In, man, I felt tension. I really did. They weren't, if you notice just the play, even though they were doing tag team tandem moves together, the way they weren't looking at each other, there was visible tension there. And there was a fan that popped up in the comments on Ortiz's post about this, how he was like, man, this is how I'm going to find out. And he said, yeah, Tony Khan really screwed up with you guys by not putting the tag team titles on you. And Ortiz commented on that and said, Tony had nothing to do with that. It was both our faults. Our head weren't in the right place. So there was obviously stuff brewing between them that probably kept them from getting those titles. And I think Santana's always wanted to break out on his own. I hope we know there's real life drama between them, and I'm with you. I hope they turn it into a work. I think it'd be a great way to kick off this feud. And I got to be honest, man, the way Santana's packaging himself, I think he could be a guy. He could be a TNT title holder. I think he's very good on the mic. And I think you could tap into that scene, that he's got that New York, Puerto Rican vibe. I think there's a market there to tap into. People will get behind Santana. I'm pumped for it. I love these guys, and I hope that their feud kicks off a good, successful singles run for both of them.
And as confirmed during the All Out scrum, Tony Khan was asked about Sonny Kiss's AEW contract, and Tony did have kind words for Sonny Kiss, saying the contract came up and it's not going to be renewed. We get Sonny Kiss announcing for the House of Glory show coming up over here. So Sonny Kiss's time in AEW ends for now. Tony Khan didn't put the close the door on it because we know that she was doing some good stuff over in the AEW roster.
Yeah, I think it's best that she go out and ply her trade and get her skills up, and instead of being locked in where we don't see, go out, hit the indies, do your thing, make a name. You can always come back around.
And a report inside the Wrestling Observer newsletter, there was a lot of conversation about the Punk situation, encapsulate the whole history of it, which is cool to read in a segmented fashion because it feels like we've been living in real time. But to see the overhead view of it, we're getting some new information that wasn't disclosed to us that maybe more is going to come out in time. And I think definitely that's going to happen. But we got a report that the Young Bucks were willing to work with CM Punk in time. And this is according to one person very close to the situation. The Young Bucks have said that if 6 months went by without CM Punk having any issues, then they would have been willing to sit down and work with him in AEW. It was almost like the sign that says this many days since last incident, and the clock kept getting reset and it never got to the point. You can't blame them from setting the time limit and saying like, let's just see if he's able to go this amount of time without an issue.
Yeah. When I hear stuff like this, I hate it because I'm like, dude, you just couldn't be cool for 6 months. Like, it's like what might have been. Like They were going, but you don't know if this also has a little bit of a stench of.
It's a PR spin for them for sure.
100%. It looks like a PR spin of like, look, guys, we were going to do it if he would have played ball. Like there's a little bit of that to it. So,
We also have the return of Pretty Deadly on TV on Friday SmackDown. So as the Judgment Day faced the Brawling Brutes on Friday's show, Elton Prince and Kit Wilson were seen watching them from the monitor backstage. Prince was in a wheelchair and also his arm in a sling. They've been off TV since July 14th, where they got hurt and there's a shoulder injury for Prince, and they've been off TV recovering. So they're going to be a welcome addition back to the tag division once they're both medically cleared. Love what they did in NXT. Love what they were doing on the main roster for the short period of time while they were there. They were a young upstart team. They challenged Owens and Zayn for the tag titles, and prior to Prince's injury, they were aligned with Austin Theory to see if they kind of revisit that going forward, because Austin Theory needs a goddamn identity. Maybe puts him with Pretty Deadly.
Yeah, and Pretty Deadly is extremely entertaining. NXT UK, I think they're one of the bright spots in WWE's tag division.
And finally, here on the quick hitters, we had Drew McIntyre commenting on his WWE contract and future with the company. And he said, quote, "The internet keeps talking about my future, I guess, but my focus is on the here and the now. I don't plan to be anywhere else. That's as much as I can give." So everyone's like, maybe he's going to show up in London for All In, but no, he's here to stay. And he's clearly happy with what they're doing. And he was just getting right. So I think at this point, his upcoming status from WWE, like this seems like he's here to stay, but this also is, you want to talk about PR spin, wanting to make sure that you're making the people that are aware of your contract negotiations, that you are happy. I would imagine that his whole camp would make sure he's saying something like that. So it doesn't dismiss that he's going anywhere else, because at the end of the day, they have to get to the table and pay him.
This means nothing to me. He can say, the key word in that phrase is, I don't plan to be anywhere else. Because here's the thing, he is playing a very, very smart game here. He doesn't want to say something that would bury him in booking. He wants to stay strong and be relevant leading up to Mania. But this is something very, very, you want to watch this close, especially in the springtime and Mania season. Watch this contract situation close. Because if his contract ends around April 2024 and Tony's wanting to sell a lot of tickets for the second All In, it's going to be a lot harder to fill Wembley the second time around than it was the first time around. That's a big major thing to throw on that card to attract people to Wembley. So I think there's going to be a legit bidding. There's going to be offers on the table for Drew. I think WWE's probably going to want to lock him up before he hits the open market, but it's something to watch. I think he could easily re-sign with WWE, or he could play the field. Who knows?
That's our quick hitters. Let's get to Dave's Raves and see what he had to say about the week in wrestling.
Dave Raves.
Uncle Dave has been busy. He's been citing that he's trying to sit down and write this bio for Terry Funk and wants to get away from all the news and maybe kind of clear his head. And I'm so interested to read what he writes, because his posthumous eulogies for a lot of the talent in wrestling are, to me, the best thing he does. If you guys ever want to get the full scope of what someone's achieved in their career, read those eulogies when someone passes. But his match of the week was obviously Bryan Danielson versus Ricky Starks. He gave that 5 stars. His performer of the week was Bryan Danielson, and he had some very kind words for that match. And I think you said the same thing on the flagship prior to him writing this. He said, "Cue Bryan Danielson and Ricky Starks, who had the best strap match I've ever seen." And he gave that match 5 stars. He also gave Kenny Omega and Konosuke Takeshita 5 stars as well. So that is a big feather in the cap of both those matches. And he also said both matches were better than anything he saw in England last week. And that's awfully high praise considering the matches on both AEW and Rev Pro. It was more of a night of great matches as opposed to a lot of ramifications. Talk about the title change between Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy, but he was blown away by everything he saw at All Out and was kind of echoing what we've been saying, that the match, for the lack of build, we still got an amazing night of 13 matches of wrestling that succeeded any sort of expectations we might have had for it.
Yeah, he said the biggest surprise was Miro Hobbs. That Miro Hobbs match, the meat match, it was one of my favorite matches of the weekend, but I think he nails it. As far as strap match, I can't think of another strap match that goes over this. I mean, these two guys literally beat the hell out of one another. And to get a loss, Ricky just elevated. Like that. If you saw the post All Out promo vignette they shot with Ricky that was on Dynamite, this guy, they have something here. I know that we keep saying it and we keep saying waiting, and he's had such a bad string of luck with the neck injury, with, he's tabbed for a Punk feud. Punk gets fired. but he always steps up. Anytime they put him in a spot, he delivers. Even when he was doing commentary on Rampage, if you remember, while he was injured, he was doing commentary. This guy put the rocket on Ricky Starks. You have a match with Danielson like this, all guts, man, all guts.
All right, let's get to the week ahead to preview what is going to be another eventful week in wrestling.
The week ahead.
All right, starting with Raw tonight, we have the Women's World Championship on the line. Rhea Ripley defending against Raquel Rodriguez with the stipulation Dirty Dom's banned from ringside. So we're going to get this match between, and what an ugly match it was at Payback. Hopefully it's better than what they did. They had no cohesion, so we'll see what they do on Raw. Cody Rhodes appearing, and then Gunther celebrating, breaking the IC title record with the celebration. Hopefully there's some balloons and all that, and they have pomp and circumstance for the dude, because what an accomplishment it was.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they just present this celebration with Gunther. He doesn't seem like he's a big party guy, so I want to see how they present this.
On Tuesday's NXT, we have a lot of awesome matches on deck. NXT Women's Championship, Tiffany Stratton defense against Becky Lynch. The NXT Championship number one contenders match, Wesley against Dragunov. The Global Heritage Invitational taking place with two matches, Tyler Bate versus Axiom, and also Akira Tozawa versus Nathan Frazier. And topped off with the Creed brothers versus Idris Enough and Malik Blade. So some good matches here in NXT on Tuesday. This is the build towards No Mercy at the end of the month. And the Global Heritage Invitational taking up the bountiful of the booking. But Becky Lynch being on NXT is a big get. Yeah, man.
Nick Khan's really trying to make this a third brand. You're seeing a lot of crossover. They're trying to knock on the door of that Dynamite rating, and they're coming close with putting, Judgment Day on there pretty regularly. Now you got Becky Lynch against Stratton. I think they're queuing up Stratton to go to the roster sooner rather than later.
On AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, we got the Grand Slam World Title Eliminator Tournament final, Roderick Strong versus Samoa Joe. We have the International Title, Jon Moxley defending against Big Bill. We have a four-way women's title eliminator match, Britt Baker versus Hikaru Shida versus Nyla Rose versus Toni Storm, Hangman Page versus Brian Cage, and Don Callis is going to reveal his next masterpiece and potentially Takeshi's next opponent. Good stuff on Wednesday.
Yeah, a lot of good story, guys. If you were down on AEW with all the Punk stuff, and they're getting their groove back, baby. They're getting their groove back.
So Impact 1000th episode, we covered that in full. So if you're looking for that, go back to the big story number 3. Friday, we have SmackDown LA Knight versus The Miz, the Grayson Waller effect with guest John Cena. So SmackDown kind of, maybe we get the return of some Bloodline stuff. It's been a while. Like I know we got Jimmy Uso, and Jey Uso is now on Raw. Maybe we'll get some clarity about who's going to SmackDown. Probably Cody Rhodes to set the stage for eventually going to be Cody versus Roman at WrestleMania 40. Like the trade, they said there's going to be a trade. I'd imagine it's going to be Cody Rhodes, right? It has to be.
Yeah, it's what it's feeling like. That's what it's feeling like. And John Cena, give him some direction. If he's coming back for a little run, have him do something instead of just popping up in random things. Like it just feels like they think him essentially just being there is going to make me care. No, when you bring guys back, I want to see them involved in feuds. I never cared about, he's going to be here and pop up. I don't know. Like
I thought Cena encapsulated so perfectly on the Chick Foley show on their last podcast talking about John Cena, and the dude is a clown. Like he's acting like a sideshow with this. And like we referenced it last week. Like would the GOAT ever do this? Would Bret Hart or any of the GOATs, Stone Cold Steve Austin, would ever wear the high-waisted pants and as a caricature of yourself? That's what like she was saying, and I thought it was so perfectly said. It encapsulated what my thought was thinking about him.
Spot on, Sheena.
He's acting like a version of himself that has no direction and no weight to it. It's just him playing himself as an actor. Like he doesn't know how to be John Cena anymore. And it's horrible.
They trot his goofy ass out there and do this stuff. Like it is. I'm not a Cena guy. But even if you're the most staunch Cena supporter, how do you not see this circus show and think it's sullying whatever he was to you in the last 20 years? It's an embarrassment.
On AEW Collision on Saturday, we have one match announced. AEW Tag Team Championship on the line. FTR defending against the Iron Savages. So going to be a good match. I'm sure we're going to get more Collision announcements on Wednesday on Dynamite. Of course, we're building towards Grand Slam at Arthur Ashe, which right now is shaping up to be a really good card. Going through it quick, Chris Jericho versus Sammy Guevara. We got the AEW Women's World Championship. Saraya defending against the winner of the Grand Slam Women's World Title Eliminator. That's happening on Dynamite this week. Of course, the AEW World Championship, MJF defending against the winner of the Grand Slam World Title Eliminator Tournament, which is either Samoa Joe or Roderick Strong.
Yeah.
So some good stuff, man. Wrestling's in a good place. Love that we had a conversation, our big three stories about stuff that isn't like this backstage,
I know,
whatever drama that's going on.
It's good to get out of that. I feel refreshed as a wrestling fan. There is not an ounce of me that is down on any product, or I'm just hopeful. I think it's exciting. We're entering the holiday season. Halloween, Thanksgiving. I know wrestling sometimes can take a back seat during the holidays as we kind of gear up for the Rumble and Mania season, but something about this fall feels special. We got Wrestle Dream, we got Survivor Series, we got a lot of good, fresh stories, a lot of good, fresh talent. I'm excited for the fall.
So make sure you guys are tuning into the Wrestle Turnbuckle Tavern shows we have here. Of course, Brace for Impact on Thursdays, 10 p.m. Also, check out Shot Nostalgia on Fridays. We're covering all the episodes of Saturday night's main event in full. We're going to be doing episode 5 coming up this weekend, or this Friday, I should say, dropping on Saturday this weekend. And stay tuned for the further date, just arranging time that I'm going to be on Marco's open mic show. So we're going to be recording sometime in the coming weeks, and that's going to be dropping soon. Have a conversation. Looking forward to it because I love what he's doing on that platform with the conversations he's having and getting the side of different personalities, wrestling, podcasting, and wrestling alike. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I love open mic, digging into the personality behind just the wrestling fandom. It's a fun show. Check it out. The debate this week, if you didn't catch it, it was on last night. It's on audio today. We had Al Day from Gorilla Brain Podcast. It was a fun conversation. We discuss what's more compelling, CM Punk back in WWE or Edge in AEW. That's our big topic. A couple other topics to go on, so always check out the debate. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. If you go to theturnbuckletavern.com, those are the 3 hubs. Whether it's video or audio, 7 days a week, you're getting something from the tavern. We appreciate you guys. We love doing this for you. We keep saying there's big things coming. Trust us, there's big things coming. It's all a work in process. We can't wait to get back here next Monday with you guys. So until next Monday, when we wine and dine with you kings and queens, stay out of the alley and away from the pork and beans. God luck and good speed.
Reach for the sky, boy.